on my attention. My countrymen, they love their fiction. Words upon now, it's made with good intentions.
Kia ora and welcome to a special episode of One of 200. Today we have two guests. It's going to be an interview again. Your host is Josephine. And as our guests, we have Will and Ava, who are two activists from, I'm kind of, a little possessive about them because they are from my local area. They are from Ototahi, Christchurch. And, we've marched together for 2 years now. Ava, now and then she disappears back to her family in Europe, but she's in the movement, whether she's there or she's here. So I'm really excited to have Will and Ava here today with us. What's really interesting about this is, the fact that they were part of the Flotilla movement and the global March to Gaza movement as well. And, just before we start and before I, give it over to them, I just want to talk about the context within which we are at the moment. We are 2 years into the Gaza genocide. There has been, a fake ceasefire, which has been broken quite a few times already. The siege hasn't been lifted. The Rafah crossing hasn't been lifted. The people are still struggling. Lots of people still starving. So this is the scenario within which we are recording this interview. And to our dismay, our defense minister, Judith Collins, as we speak, we're recording this on the 22nd of October. She is currently in the United States and she is in the Pentagon with the U.S. Department of War, which is one of the key drivers of the genocide and the 77 years of ethnic cleansing that's happening in Gaza. So this is the context within which we are taking, this interview, recording this interview. I just want to start off by, introducing my guests. I'll allow them to introduce themselves. Over to you, Will. Can you introduce yourself?
Yeah, thanks, Josephine. My name's Will. I'm from Ototahi, as Josephine said, and I've been in the Palestine activism solidarity scene or movement since around January 2024, although since 2023 I was, horrified at what was going on. And so I've been doing what I can over the last 2 years, although it never really feels like enough. Ava and I were talking about this the other night, that even as soon as you do some action and you feel like you're doing something, it doesn't really, that feeling doesn't last long. It feels like there's so much more to be done. I've done a few actions over the 2 years. I did a walk. The first one I did was a walk from Christchurch to Wellington to the Israeli embassy up there to raise funds and awareness for the issue, and then joined Palestine Solidarity in Aotearoa, which is where I met Ava, who was pretty much running the PSNA when I got there. And then was organizing rallies with them for a long time, and did a hunger strike as well, which Ava was also extremely helpful with the organization and making everything that needed to happen, and contacts and emails and things. And then, as you said, we were part of the global march to Gaza. So we both went to Egypt. And most recently we've been on the Flotilla, the Freedom Flotilla. So that's who I am in this context. Yeah.
Yeah, and you do have a background before that, don't you? Like you are involved in the art scene of Aotearoa, New Zealand.
Yeah, that's right. I've been an actor for a long time. I went to drama school in London and have done mostly theatre, but a little bit of television as well. I'm quite well known for being on Shortland Street, although I would rather be known for my activism than a soap opera, but people recognize me from that. And now I'm teaching children and working with children to help them with their performance and poetry and confidence and expression for their speech and drama exams, and creating movies about Aotearoa history in which all the parts are played by children.
Oh, that's really interesting. So is it at a school that you're teaching?
Yeah, I teach speech and drama at Medbury Primary School, and I've been making films with Gilberthorpe Primary in Hornby.
Thank you for that, Will. Over to you, Ava. Can you introduce yourself and talk a little bit about, your history in the movement, but also who you are as a person, your background?
Sure. Yeah, thanks for having us on the show. Well, my name is Ava. I'm originally from Germany, half German, half Pakistani, and I've lived in New Zealand since 2018 and joined the PSNA Utautahi in November 2023. And I must correct Will in saying that I basically ran PSNA Christchurch. That's not true. We're a big team, and there were so many helping hands. And but yeah, I did enjoy organizing mostly the rallies and I guess setting up internal structures, things like the WhatsApp groups, sorting that out so that we can be as effective as possible. I haven't done a hunger strike or anything, any big stunts like this. I would say my strength is organizing rallies and I don't know, making signs and things like this. My background is actually somewhere completely different. I studied industrial engineering and then since then mostly worked in housing. I'm really into housing, environmental housing, like straw bale construction, or
Mm,
I had a startup in Bangladesh where we try to produce building blocks that don't ruin the environment, that don't have such a high toll on the environment. So yeah, I'm, as you said, sort of between New Zealand and Germany, though my new home is definitely New Zealand, and I'm trying not to fly so much anymore because it's bad for the environment. But when things like the Global March to Gaza or the Flotilla come up, I feel it's worth it. It's worth going there
mm.
and being there since we have the privilege to do so.
Thank you so much for that, Ava. I mean, both of you are very modest. I would say both of you have been quite central figures in the Christchurch PSNA activist space. I know both of you through that. We all met through PSNA organizing and, speaking at the rallies. And Ava doesn't really. She's very modest. She doesn't talk about the fact that she's got artistic abilities. She's organized and directed street plays as well for PSNA, which I've had the privilege of and the luck of being part of. So great group of friends here actually, and I have deep respect for both of you. So it's really interesting that we are, in this point, we've been working together in some way or the other, since for around 2 years now. And, you both have been involved in these global movements, which have involved, big activists, people with a lot of experience, life experience organizing and, taking action against injustices, against war, and so forth. And the major two movements I'm talking about is, the your attempt to break the siege through the southern crossing in Rafah. You guys tried to enter there through Egypt, and thereafter, more recently, going to Gaza by water, by sea on the conscience. So these two are connected. It's kind of people mobilizing, feeling helpless, and feeling like they need to do something, even though so many of us around the world, people are awake to the injustices. We're still not able to move the political system, the powerful, to do anything. So, and these kinds of actions have risen in that vacuum. And so, what has your experience been doing this? Firstly, what drove you to go to Egypt? And when you did go to Egypt, that was a few months ago, right? Now, there were also other New Zealanders there that you met and you collaborated with in your activism. And I can see those kind of connections still, blossoming within this activist space. We are networking, we are leaning on each other's strengths and trying to amplify this movement, which is fundamentally against a genocide, which shouldn't really exist, really. But the fact that we are having to take all our time, and whatever privileges and whatever we have, and put it towards this movement. Can you tell me what really took you to Egypt, and when did that happen, and how did that happen, and so forth?
Yeah. So I felt as though it was important to be a part of anything that was happening globally. If when I got the sense that the global march to Gaza was going to be a big thing, it felt like, yeah, this is definitely the right thing to be a part of it and to make whatever sacrifices were necessary to go there and take part. It was criticized as being performative, which I sort of was confused by that criticism, because I feel as though the protests are quite performative in a way, but there's nothing. I mean, we're speaking up. I mean, speaking is in a way performative anyway. Doing these actions is to have a point, and so if you're going to be involved in something that has a message that is important, then what's the problem with it being performative? And so I connected with the vision of this mission. Obviously, the intent was to walk into Gaza, to march as many people as possible up to the gates and be there until they opened them. And we had lawyers with us, and we had high profile people there, and so the hope was that we would open the gates and allow aid in, just by virtue of our presence there. And it was a success. It was a success in that it created a huge amount of attention and a huge amount of connections as well. We all ended up with a lot of global connections. Ava we'll probably talk about this later on, but was invited to be a part of the Global Alliance through this mission that we went on to Egypt. And so, yeah, how did I actually end up deciding to go? It feels like a long time ago.
I think I think Roger Fowler asked you to go, if I remember correctly. I
Yeah,
think it was.
that's
I
right.
think Roger Fowler from Kyoto Gaza approached Will originally to join the Flotilla 2024, if I
Mm,
remember correctly, and that didn't go ahead because I think the ship was never allowed to leave Turkey. And
yeah,
from
yeah,
there, he was meant to join the diplomatic
yeah,
um,
yeah, yeah. That's right.
and
Yeah,
enforcement.
sorry,
What is it
because
called? Yeah.
like the interview was primarily going to be about the the flotilla, but I just thought that it all leads to the flotilla, right? These are the steps
Yeah,
that you took, you traced in order to reach there. So
yeah,
I just
that's right.
thought it would be interesting because this is all
Mm,
part of the global struggle,
yeah,
that
yeah.
the popular struggle against the genocide in Gaza.
Yeah, yeah. Thanks for that, Ava. That has jogged my memory. Yeah, and I think it's an important point to make that whatever action you do or gathering you go to, the connections are extremely important that you make there. And the connection with Roger Fowler happened through the hunger strike that I was on, and John Minto organised an action against Raycon up in Auckland, and I met Roger Fowler there. And so, because I ended up with a reasonable social media following from that, Roger thought it would be a good idea if I could go on the march to Gaza and make videos and interview people and things like that. So yeah, Roger offered to fly me over there and to be a part of it, which I was really grateful for. And then Ava came as well, and we were like a little journalist team doing things over there. Yeah, I mean, I don't know how much detail you want to go into of the experience over there. Maybe Ava, you have some
Yeah,
things to.
I just I can ask some questions which might help. Ava, so when you were in Egypt, like, um, as a person who studies the global South and sociology and colonialism and things like that, I know that the people in Egypt are with Palestinian people. But at the same time, when you went to Egypt, you were faced with this brick wall, which was the system there, the political system, the powers that be wanted to block you, or the people didn't really. the voice of the people wasn't coming to the top. It was some other forces at play. So, can you tell me a little bit about that? What was the reaction of the people in Egypt when you were there as part of this march? And compare that with what was it like interacting with the security officers and the people who stopped basically this march to Gaza?
Yeah, that's a good question. It, I think in the run up to it, we already were told that we can expect quiet, sort of under the radar support from the people and not open, like, running around with Palestinian flag in the streets or anything, but we can count on the support of the people, and I'll get to specifically what that looked like, but that on the political level we could face opposition, and going to Egypt we still hadn't had, and I think around 4,000 people, if I'm not mistaken, actually went there to participate in the March to Gaza. And by that time, we hadn't received green light from the authorities, but we also hadn't received a no, you're not allowed to march. So they sort of left it open, and everyone was hopeful that it could go ahead. It never did. Maybe I can just briefly sketch what the day looked like, where it was all meant to happen. We were sitting in a cafe having breakfast when we finally got the message via, I think, a signal channel, but an open signal channel, which is still mind-boggling that they basically announced to the world that everyone please make their way now to this meeting point in, oh, I forgot the name of that place. I should have looked it up. Anyway, we all hopped in an Uber and headed out there,
Ismailia.
which, Ismailia. Yeah, that's right, Ismailia. It was sort of northeast of Cairo. And we hopped in an Uber together with our friend Billy from Christchurch and headed there. And we were stopped at the first checkpoint. A few of us made it through to a second checkpoint and we'd stopped there. And it was an interesting experience because they stopped all the cars with Westerners. I think that was the first experience for me to be singled out because of the Western passport and because of the white skin rather than the other way around. And it's a very healthy experience to have. Anyway, we were stopped at this checkpoint, which was near a gas station and near some kind of office building, or I don't know, yeah, what kind of building that was. And they asked for all our passports. Plainclothes police officers asked for, well, I don't even know if they were police. They were just people asking for our passports. Billy and Will handed them over straight away. I said mine is in the boot, so I had to get out of the car. By the time I opened the boot in my bag, they had forgotten that they don't have my passport yet and walked away. So I never actually handed over my passport, which didn't make a difference in the end. But anyway, and then hours passed and they sort of gradually assembled around that building, and suddenly they started putting up these plastic barricades, and most people still didn't have their passport back. I might have been the only one that had it still. And it was still quite peaceful. People played some music, and it was beautiful for us to finally see the others. I think this is what's so sad about the mission, is that we never got to assemble all of those 4,000 plus minus people in one space because of this crackdown on that day. But at least we saw 200 or 300 of us at the same checkpoint. And we were just hanging out there. We were allowed to go to the toilet at the gas station in small groups. People bought water and some snacks, and we let the hours pass. And then suddenly the mood changed, the atmosphere changed, and I think they had asked us to voluntarily get on these buses, but they wouldn't tell us where the buses would go. And one of our main organizers, Saif, he was negotiating with them and telling us what the options are and so on and so forth. Anyway, at some point the atmosphere completely changed, and they started violently picking people out of the crowd and dragging them across the floor and shoving them into these buses. And I think pretty much everyone who was there probably had nonviolent training, so most people just sat down on the floor, and we didn't resist in a violent way. Some people, let their bodies slump when they were dragged. They weren't exactly assisting to get on these buses. But for me, looking back at the videos, Billy and I were quite exposed until the last minute. We were just sitting there on this little inflatable mattress on the ground, filming what was happening, which was our best defense in recording. But we got backlash from them as well, saying if you don't stop filming, we're gonna break your phones. And anyway, at some point, it was our turn to be grabbed. And that was the first time that I experienced some, well, on the scale of things, still mild violence against me, but it did shake me. This guy hit my phone, which hit me in the face, and then he grabbed my hair to force me to stand up. And yeah, that did shake me even days after. I think it stripped me of this naive belief that my passport will protect me and that my light skin will protect me, which I know is an awful thing to say, that sort of I'm banking on this white people card. But I did that in Bangladesh as well for the benefit of others, I would say. You know, you are in a position to protect others, more vulnerable people, because you have that passport and because you have that lighter skin color and because people are still wired to treat you better in most cases because of yeah. Anyway, it was, I don't want it to make it so much about me, sorry. It was, we were pushed on these buses and eventually, yeah, quite a scary experience as well. Once we were all on the bus, they picked individual people out, two people, one young guy from the front. This plainclothes officer just came in and pointed at him and said, "Get out, go into this smaller bus across the road." And we didn't know what that bus was about. And then he came on the bus a second time and pointed at Will and forced him to get off the bus. And the last thing I wanted was to get separated in all this mess. So we decided to go out together. And apparently that guy, yeah, he changed his mind when we reached the small bus and said, "Oh, is this your wife? Go back to the bus with your wife." So here we were, married by an Egyptian thug on the spot. Anyway, the sad part about the Global March to Gaza was that after this breakdown of the plan, this plan A, to all go to Ismailia and start marching to Gaza from there through the desert, we all returned to Cairo. This bus dropped us and all the others somewhere in Cairo. And we were not able to all assemble in one spot. For example, this big historic space of the Tahrir Square where the Arab Spring started or played out in a big role. And it was, yeah, it was a bit of a bummer to have to leave Egypt without managing to assemble everyone. In terms of support from individual Egyptians, it was so beautiful to see that there was one Egyptian lady who, under great risk and threat to herself and her family, offered all the Kiwi delegation, I think we were 12 something around 12 people, 12 Kiwis there, her house about an hour away from Cairo, so we could at least assemble, you know, meet our own delegation there and try to figure out what our next steps were. And we were at that point still thinking of all meeting in one place, but it was just too dangerous.
Yeah, and from what both of you just said about, what led to it, this first stage of your movement to Gaza, I would call it, is, the meaning and the value of connections, right? And human connection, how powerful it is. When we think about it, over the last, I don't know, 30, 40 years, and we have been living in this system where democratic rights are being slowly taken away, where the political systems, especially in Western countries, are being captured by, these anti-democratic forces, basically, billionaire class, the rich, and so forth. One thing that goes hand in hand with that process, which we call neoliberalism, is individualization of people, right? Making people isolated, making people feel like everything. I mean, Margaret Thatcher said there is no society, we're only individuals, right? This idea of each to their own. We're all kind of trying to chart our own destiny as individuals, as the pilots of our own destiny. It kind of does not take into account how powerful connections are, and it's on purpose, because the way that people can become powerful is when they organize and when they network and then when they form connections. And so this is almost, it's like a deliberate strategy, political and economics and social strategy to dissipate or to erode people power. So being part of these movements, what it has taught each of us, I feel, is the power in connection, right? And I think that's basically what I'm hearing from you. And I remember the videos that you made in that, probably in that house where there were other Kiwis there as well, and those videos were really brought joy and brought together the emotions of the movement, because you were so close to Gaza at that point. And the ambition of breaking the siege as civilians is quite an amazing, it's poetic. So it was really wonderful to see those videos and those images from Egypt. Now, coming into the more recent attempt to reach Gaza, you both were part of this mission. Um, so the Sumut flotilla had already kind of set sail, and then I think it was maybe a week or two after that, if I'm correct me if I'm wrong, that you guys started, and you were on a repurposed ferry boat, if I remember right, called Conscience. What a beautiful name! And I was seeing the interviews that you were doing. You've probably trained yourselves as excellent journalists in this process, talking with the other participants in it who were from different parts of the world. I remember in particular Will and Ava, both of your little videos in various parts of that journey. You talking to the captain, for example, who's done multiple or maybe more than one, definitely, of these flotilla journeys, how she became an experienced sailor and so forth. Um, how did you reach there? Was this being part of this march to Gaza, going there by land? Those connections, did they help you in becoming part of this? Because I think that a lot of people listening, including myself, for example, we all want to be part of these missions. So if people do have the time, a lot of us don't, right? This is also part of the how the system kind of takes away our energy and our time, and keeps us in very tight situations, right? Like we're living through a time when the cost of living is so high. There's the wages have been stagnating for decades now, and the prices have increased. So um, the system ensures that we don't have the energy and the time to engage in activities that challenge it in some ways. But still, people are interested to know how is it that you reached the point where you were on that beautiful ship called the Conscience, and who are the people you met? What was your experience on it, and so forth?
I I think that as you were saying just a second ago about connections, I do think that these connections that we make at rallies or any kind of um, action that you go to are extremely important for becoming more deeply involved in the movement and understanding what's going on and being a part of organizing and
And
being involved.
challenging power, isn't it? Ultimately,
Yeah,
this is the only way we can challenge power,
yeah.
is through making those connections. Yeah.
Yeah, that's right. And I thought it was quite telling actually that in Egypt they really, really didn't want us all to get into one place, because even just the that number of people in one place is a statement in itself. So I think our power really comes from these connections and working together and organizing. And so, if people want to get involved in things like this, go to the rallies, go to the actions, and meet the people there. Become a part of the organizing team and pay attention to what's coming up. Yeah, and because it was Roger Fowler again, and the connections with him and John Minto that got us involved in the flotilla as well. yeah, as Ava said before, I'd been offered a place on a flotilla the year before and was ready to go on that, and then but it didn't eventuate, and then I was actually offered another one, offered this one, and I actually turned it down because it hadn't been long since we got back from Egypt, and I was really, it was a difficult decision for me because I had already taken a lot of time off work, and I was thinking, oh, I really might lose my job, which I love, if I go on this mission. And then had a phone call with Ava, and she said, yeah, I'm going. and and so then it was like, well, when I look back on my life, am I going to be pleased that I kept my job and wasn't a part of this thing? No, of course not. And I am really, really pleased and very grateful for Ava that she did jump on it, because that gave me the push to say, all right, fine, I'm gonna book a ticket and come along as well. So it wasn't just Roger and John; it was also Ava and the connection with her that made me involved in this. So, and I'm so grateful that I was involved in it. I think it's one of the most powerful things that I've been involved in, and it was a huge honor to take part in it. It was all a whirlwind, really. I'll give you a pretty brief run through. So it was on Tuesday, I think, that Ava and I had that conversation, and then on Thursday I was on a plane, and then on Saturday we were in the safety training in Otranto in Italy, and we had 2 or 3 days of safety training there, where we met all of the other people who were absolutely incredible, real as you'd expect to meet on a mission like this. Really down to earth people, very high qualified doctors, and some really talented journalists as well, some war correspondents. And the makeup of the Conscience, the idea was that it was a media and medics boat. So they were trying to get as many journalists and doctors and medics on board the ship as possible, in as a statement of solidarity with the journalists and medical workers that are being murdered in Gaza over the last couple of years. So, and these are the kinds of people that I have a huge amount of respect for anyway. So then it felt really cool to be rubbing shoulders with these, really highly qualified surgeons and doctors, three Palestinian surgeons who had been to Gaza multiple times. So, and they were some of the most down to earth people that I met on the entire trip. They were just so friendly, so personable and open, and I really got to know them well and hear
Mm.
their stories and talk to them about what they thought needed to be happening. But it felt very empowering to hear them say that actually we think this is what we should be doing. And yeah, so they were there after having been to Gaza multiple times, and then they'd made this decision. No, this is actually the most powerful thing I can be doing right now, is being on this ship, making this statement.
Mm.
And so we went through the training and we left, and then we were on the ship, and it was all go, really. We were working hard, making connections, making videos, doing the work that was on the ship that needed to be done, and uploading footage. That was one of the main things. And Middle East Eye actually got in touch with me early on. The news outlet Middle East Eye, and asked me to send them footage, which was a big boost of my confidence. Yeah, and and really and a relief, because all I had to do was send them raw footage, whereas up to then I'd been getting footage and then editing it myself and posting it myself and all of that jazz. Whereas now I just had to do the interviews and send the footage, which was great. So yeah,
Yeah,
learned
it's
a
really
lot from.
interesting. Yeah.
Mm,
I just suddenly remembered this. It might be a little bit of a tangent, but I'm a little bit biased here. But I remember an interview, and it was with a young woman, I think, and she said she's a socialist. Was that? I can't remember whether it
yeah,
was.
yeah.
Yeah,
Sophia.
Sophia.
Mm,
and and Roger Fowler is a socialist. There's a lot of socialists. You probably met a lot of
Mhm.
socialists in this movement. Um, Ava and Will, both of you, has being part of this movement, has it changed your politics? Like, why do you think that there's maybe this is a difficult question to answer, but why do you think there's so many socialists in this movement around you?
Well, I think that humanitarian work and socialism go hand in hand. It's you put the human front and center and not the money. So it kind of makes sense.
Yeah,
Mm.
true. And the other thing I wanted to ask you is like, so obviously, there were trained activists, they were, experienced people who've done this before, so they know what supplies you needed and all that. What was the day to day like cooking and like, how would you, were there spaces to sleep and how many people were on the boat? And do you know how many people were, because you guys were parallel to the, is it called Thousand Madeleines boats? How many people? So you mentioned 4,000 in the march, the land march. Do you know how many people were involved? And also, what was the day to days like?
Yeah, so I try to cover all those questions. So we were 92 people on board, 82 activists and 10 crew members. Though I would say the crew members were just as much activists going towards Gaza, knowing they'd be arrested as any of us. The day to day was that we needed 27 people a day to do all the chores on board. That included helping in the kitchen, cleaning the sleeping quarters, cleaning the toilets, and so on and so forth. That worked really well. People, volunteered to do these things. We had almost daily safety drills. We were sailing for, I think, 10 days, 9 days before being intercepted. So you do get to know each other quite well in such a small space. I don't know how many people are involved in the whole organization thing, but I know that there is sort of a Freedom Flotilla Coalition headquarter in Istanbul where people watched our live stream cameras, 27 cameras on board, 24/7. Yeah, it was. I want to say that the people who were on the Conscience it was like a cruise compared to being on these small nutshell sailing boats that the Thousand Madeleines were on and that the Sumut flotilla entailed. I mean, that's a whole different story of they were sailing much longer. They needed to leave earlier than us. And the Sumut was on in these rocky waves for much longer than we on this large ferry ship, and they needed to do their watches at night and stuff where most of us could sleep through. Some of us were on drone watch, of course, but compared to the Sumut people and the Thousand Madeleines people, I mean, hats off to them for doing this journey on these small sailboats, where we had the luxury with 4 Starlink connections and sitting in the this restaurant area of the ferry where we could work and not feel too seasick and all of that. One thing I just want to throw in here is it's a huge privilege to be able and allowed to participate in these missions. And I know that tens of thousands, 24,000 people, I heard the number, applied to be on the Sumut flotilla, and only a few hundred got in, got a place on it. And being asked to join and then just having to say yes was a huge privilege. And I want to encourage everyone to keep checking on the flotilla, because I hope that the organizers will open it to the public next year when the sailing season starts again in April. I suggested to them, please make it public. We need hundreds, similar to the small boats or small ships of Dunkirk, if people have seen the movie Dunkirk, where ordinary people, just whoever has a boat and has a small crew, hops on and joins the mission alongside these Freedom Flotilla Coalition and Sumut and Thousand Madeleine boats, because it doesn't seem to take that much more to overrun the Israeli Navy. Already one boat made it through and broke the siege, effectively making it into Gaza waters. And the good news, the one achievement that we did have, even though we didn't make it to Gaza, was that the next day the Gaza fishermen could fish because the patrol boats weren't there. They were all tied up in stopping us. So that was a huge achievement. And of course, all the attention that we hope we could redirect to Gaza and be the finger pointing at Gaza rather than the story itself, I think is the second biggest achievement.
Yeah, and so effectively, your boat got hijacked. You guys got captured and kidnapped in international waters. Obviously, there were more Kiwis. Three of them were in the Sumud. I think four. There was another doctor based in Melbourne, I think, who was also part of the Sumud. But then you did get intercepted and kidnapped. And then, Will, I had a chat with you the other day, and you said the Conscience is still hijacked and still sitting in Israel. They haven't released this this boat or this ship. It's a pretty big one. And apart from that, they've taken your belongings. So many illegal things have been happening. Obviously, the genocide is the most illegal thing, but even with the citizens of the privileged Western countries, which are to a great extent complicit in this genocide, Israel gets away with doing all these things to citizens of obviously the United States. Many U.S. citizens have died in Gaza. Palestinian U.S. citizens in the West Bank. We also know Shireen Abu Akleh, the journalist, American Palestinian journalist who was sniped by the IDF. So it just shows how the kind of impunity that Israel enjoys and even the United States enjoys. And despite all this, right, a genocide, we witnessed a Holocaust, and our our minister is currently sitting in the Pentagon, which has been, sponsoring this. So, what was your experience? First of all, just horrified by the world order that we're living in. But what was your experience coming face to face with what I'm no longer calling it IOF, I'm calling it IGF, the Israeli genocidal forces. You came face to face with them. What was your feeling at the moment? Did you feel like, you know, uh, organizing something like a guerrilla attack on them? I don't know what thoughts and ideas would go in my mind at that moment, but what was it like? What was their attitude towards you? Were they contemptuous? I mean, I was watching and reading about what they did to the others in the Sumud Flotilla, Greta Thunberg and her bag coming back with all these, childish and horrific things, just showing who they are, right? The diaper army, the sexual violence army, whatever, all those descriptions go with them. What did it feel like coming face to face with the diaper army?
So, what was it like? It was the actual moment for me of them being there was really really scary. That was the scariest moment for me personally of the whole experience. Was when we had the alarm. We'd had lots of these drills to get to the muster station, but this time there was an alarm at 5 o'clock in the morning, and I could hear it in the captain's voice that it definitely wasn't a drill this time. She was saying, "Get to the muster station now." And so we all went up there, and they were already there. We put our life jackets on. We were expecting about an hour and a half warning before they would arrive, because we had a radar there, and the captain had said we'll probably know that they're coming and have an hour and a half or so warning, but we didn't for whatever reason. They were already there, so the ship was being flanked by, I don't know, three, maybe four of these scary looking speedboats with soldiers on them coming alongside. There was a really large naval ship there. There was drones flying over us, and there were helicopters. I don't know how many helicopters. So it felt quite surreal and really, really scary. We had a plan, the journalists, to try and live stream this moment, because this is what we want to get out to the world: is the Israelis breaking the law yet again, and hopefully be able to show the world this moment of them illegally boarding our ship in international waters. Because it does have to be highlighted over and over again that what they did was completely illegal. We were in international waters. You can't just board a ship and kidnap international civilians for no reason. That's completely illegal. So we wanted to live stream this, and we'd had a plan, and we'd figured out where the best places for Wi-Fi were and everything. there was no Wi-Fi for the first time. There was no Wi-Fi. They had done something to block the Wi-Fi. I don't know how they did it, but there was just no Wi-Fi, which was a scary moment in itself. Like, okay, well, we can't do what we planned, but also no one can see us right now.
Mm.
Um, they might be about to kill us, and just call it a mistake, like they've done so many times before. Oh, sorry, we made a mistake. And then who's going to do something about that? Is Winston Peters going to do something about it? Okay, there may have been New Zealand citizens on board. What's Winston Peters going to do? Because they have the ability to act with total impunity. So it was genuinely really scary. And then, so we're all sitting there with our hands up or out, and we were chanting, we are journalists, we are medics, we are journalists, we are medics. We'd had quite a bit of discussion about what the right thing was to chant at this moment. We didn't want to chant something provocative necessarily. Anyway, there were a lot of opinions going around, and this was the chant that we arrived at, because it highlighted again that they will kill and commit crimes against journalists and medics. So they flew the helicopters over the ship, over the top of us, and had a lot of IGF soldiers coming down these ropes onto the ship, and I really, that moment was the scariest of the entire experience, because the ship was moving on the sea and the helicopters moving in the air, and there's a crane on the back of the ship, and it looked really close, like the blades are going to hit that crane, and the helicopters over the top of us, and yeah, so what if they did actually make a mistake and crash this helicopter on top of us? Anyway, they didn't. They slid down these ropes and then came down with their guns, with their machine guns and shotguns and handguns, and there was lasers pointed at our life jackets and guns pointed at our faces, and there was relief when they didn't just start shooting or being violent right from the get-go. They were rough with us, and they did push us around, and they did point their weapons in our faces, and they did hurt people during that time. And then they searched us. They searched through everything in our pockets. We'd thrown all our phones and things overboard, to stop them from getting their hands on our information or our contacts and photos, etc. So we'd thrown all of that overboard. They went through our phones and pockets and searched us, and then they held us at gunpoint. You jump in if you've got anything to add, Ava. They held
Yeah.
us. Want to
So
add
how
anything
long were you in captivity?
total or in that part?
Yeah, in that part, from when they intercepted you till when you got released.
Well, it was about a 12-hour journey from where we were, which was 130 nautical miles outside of Gaza. It was about a 12-hour journey, maybe a bit more because they didn't know how to drive the ship. I was
Yeah.
sitting next to the captain, and it took them quite a while to figure out how to actually steer this thing, which was funny.
And then you were
But
taken to
yeah,
a like a prison or something like that once you were
we
in
were
Israel.
yeah, we were taken to Ashdod port, and they had this really surreal media experience where they lined all of these pathetic soldier goons up on the side of the ship and like posed for the cameras and had Israeli flags on the ship and stuff, like super proud of the fact that they'd just taken the civilian ship. And then we all came off the gangplank one by one, and there was a line of police officers there. So as soon as you stepped off, you'd get grabbed by two people or four people. Or I saw one guy called Ali from Tunisia. He had, I don't know, maybe 9 or 10 police officers around him, and they were just beating him up. Like he was on the floor, and they were kicking and punching him, and they damaged his neck. And they were targeting people based on their ethnicity and skin color. And so that was a pretty horrible experience, like basically standing in line to get beaten up. And then they twisted our arms and pushed our heads down and walked us past the photographers over to this area where there was music playing, and they had us kneeling on the concrete for a couple of hours at least with our hands behind our backs. Some people had their hands zip tied behind their backs,
So
and
what kind of music? What?
oh, I
Why
don't
is there
know. It
music?
was Israeli
Oh,
lyrics and pop music. I don't know. And people
right.
standing around and laughing. It was like this weird sort of atmosphere of really immature sort of. I mean, to say it was like high school kind of diminishes the experience, but I did get this sense of immaturity from the
Yeah.
actual soldiers that, yeah, they're just like young people who enjoy the power trip.
And it's consistent with what we saw with, Greta Thunberg's bag returning. It just looked like, high school level immaturity happening there. Ava, really what I want to know is after all these experiences, how do you see this movement? What have you learned from it? And what is the way forward?
That's a big question. Well,
How,
maybe just to finish off what
yeah,
Will said, I
go
think
ahead.
that because it's encouraging, I think it's a win for our movement to know that our treatment, while rough, was not as bad as what the Samud people experienced. And the reason
Mm,
for that is not because Israel has found its conscience, but because there was a global outcry of what had happened to the Samud participants, because there were massive rallies around the world to protest what had happened to the Samud participants, and us being kidnapped a few days later. I don't know exactly how many days later, but it did make a difference. You could tell that they know they can't get away with whatever they want. They still treated people really badly and hurt them and threatened them and put them in solitary confinement and things like this. But I want people to know that it does make a difference to go to take to the streets and to organize and to build this global network. It does make a difference. The takeaway from all of this and where this movement is going, well, that's a big question. I mean, I think the frustrating part is that things are taking so long and moving so slow that sometimes we have a feeling nothing is changing and things are just getting worse. But looking at the protests in the US, for example, the No Kings protest, that's not unrelated to Gaza. That's very, very much related to Gaza. It's all intertwined. And seeing so many people mobilize and wake up, I think what Palestine has done for us, paying the highest price themselves, but what they have done for us, meaning for the Western societies, is that they helped us wake up. And it's been long, long, long overdue. But I think we really needed it. And we're not just trying to achieve a ceasefire in Gaza. We're not quote unquote just trying to achieve a free Palestine. We're trying to realize a free world. I mean, free societies all over the world. And I think what we all learned, me included, is how oppressed we all are, that this whole it's a complete scam that my own government in Germany talks about human rights and lets thousands of people drown in the Mediterranean Sea trying to reach our shores because we make their countries unlivable. So it's been, and I think this is what's also so hard on our selves is that it's so hard for us to realize that we can't trust our own governments anymore, or never could really, but now we realize it, we see it very clearly. Um, we need to, and I like what Chloe Swarbrick said in one of her, we need to define ourselves not just by what we're against, but more importantly by what we stand for. It's very easy in these last 2 years to be we're against our own politicians. We are against the politicians in Gaza. We are against the Zionists. We are even against our own New Zealand citizens who don't show up to the protest. You know, we have a lot of against energy in us, and I think that we need to switch that and say what do we stand for, and to realize that the people that we currently direct negative energy towards are actually our allies. We need to win them over to join us, and that includes Israeli soldiers. And I hope that doesn't sound like I'm diminishing the suffering that Palestinians are suffering at the hands of Israelis. But when I was on the ship, on the Conscience, and we went in our minds, we played through the moment that they will board the ship and they kidnap us and humiliate us and hurt us. I realized very early on that I need to cultivate a mindset that is not fueling anger and hatred in myself, because that is like drinking poison and expecting the other one to suffer. If I do that, if I fuel hatred and anger towards these Israeli soldiers, all I do is harm myself. And my grandfather, my German grandfather, was 17 when he enlisted in the Second World War, and he was trained as a pilot. Luckily, he was never deployed as a pilot, but he was deployed as a foot soldier, and he got shot twice. And he was deeply, heavily indoctrinated by the Nazis. I read some of his letters, and they're awful. But he still turned out as a decent human being later on and realized that what he had been told was wrong. And he developed a love for the arch enemy, France, and its people, and changed his view on Russia and so on. So what I'm trying to say is, when I was on the ship, the Conscience, and the soldiers boarded the ship, and they took us down in small groups of 3 or 5 people to go to the toilet. That's the closest I got to the soldier. I mean, he was just standing like not even half a meter away from me. And I looked into his eyes, and what I could see was a young guy who would much rather just have a normal life and even be belong. He just wants to belong as well. And I just thought, if we had met in a different circumstances, somewhere in a hostel in somewhere in the world, we could have gotten along really well. And this is just the absurd system and the situation. It's not so much the individual. Yes, the individuals currently are the ones committing all these atrocities, but we are not fighting individuals, we're fighting the system. We're not fighting the situation either. The situation on the Conscience was just like a role play. It's not the situation, it's not the individuals, it's the system we're fighting. And so I think that we need to, or I don't want to preach. I don't want to say we need to. I'm pointing very much at myself and the people that I heard in our own movement that I perceived as, I had heated discussions with people within PSNA, and they weren't constructive. I was just so anti everything. I was so enraged about this genocide that I talked harshly with our own people and said, no, you're wrong and I'm right. And so this harms our movement, this constant, our biggest force is solidarity. Solidarity with each other, solidarity with Palestine, solidarity with this, buying into this grand idea that we will bring this system that oppresses all of us to the point of collapse. And beyond that, we are building something so much more beautiful and so much more humane than what has been there. And me, for my part, I want to cultivate um, thoughts even towards the soldiers, even while they were hurting us, while they were forcing me to kneel on this hard concrete. I just try to smile inside and try to have compassion and try to see how indoctrinated they are and how much they suffer themselves, that no human being is born and wants to harm another. And I hope that these kind of thoughts help me reach out to others in the movement and reach out to groups that are currently not joining us, and making us all understand that we're in the same boat. We are, yeah, our biggest force is the human potential, and realizing we're not fighting individuals, we're fighting the system.
Will, would you like to like add something to that, or what are your, thoughts, concluding thoughts?
I thought that was a really fantastic answer. I don't have a huge amount to add to that. I thought that was a beautiful, I really, yeah, thanks for putting it so clearly, Ava.
And yeah, it's, we're all in this struggle, right, of contending with the system, which is so wrong. It's like, what the hell's going on? Like, a genocide is going, it was live streamed. We all know it's wrong. People who are doing it, Netanyahu knows it's wrong. Um, these countries like Germany, New Zealand, all these countries, they've been, lecturing the rest of the world about human rights and, freedom of speech and all these kind of like values, and they stand exposed at this point. Um, like you say, for me as well, the main question is the system. What kind of system are we contending with? So it's good that we identify what the system, that it is a system, but what is the system? And that's, for me, I'm kind of interested in identifying it as well, what the system is. And, both of you mentioned that we realized that our governments aren't working for us. Then the question is, who are they working on behalf? This is the question. Or what system are they working on behalf? And obviously, being in this movement, it has become extremely clear for most of us that the genocide is ongoing not because, people support it. People don't. Like, even in the countries that are sponsoring the genocide, that are giving the arms, that are, participating in it, they know that killing children is wrong. And not only that, like, if you look at the United States and Europe and all these countries that have traditionally stood with Israel regardless of their, all these episodes of violence, which they call the lawn mowing or whatever they call, in which each episode thousands of people, more than 1,000 people died in, 2021, 2019, 2014. So these episodes are happening, and these countries like New Zealand, but more so like European countries, including Germany, they stand with Israel thick and thin. But now the people, even though the media has always, given more voice to the perspective of the establishment and the powers and the system, people have cut through that and made it more and more clear to themselves and to others around them that this is wrong. And there's no support. The genocide is not supported by the people. There's no democratic support. So it kind of, the facade of Western democracy is kind of crumbling before our eyes, because we know that the foreign policy is not driven by democratic interests of the people. Rather, it is the interest of the system. What does the system need? It's the genocide is ongoing because it is profitable, right? And you mentioned about Egypt and the fact that the people supported you. They gave you, they welcomed you into their home, but the guards were the ones enforcing the rules of the system. Again, what it points to for me is the fact that that region around Palestine has been captured, right? The sovereign aspirations of the people have been intercepted by what I call the global imperial system, which operates on this engine of capitalism, which is based on profits. And at some level, um, it goes beyond. It's not, you can't pin it down to individuals. It's almost like a self-generating cycle of violence, right? When the economic and political systems are based on the principle of profits, then we're all part of, we're working within capitalist systems. Some people are salespeople for, you know, maybe an arms corporation or a software company, which gives some kind of service to the Israeli military or the US military or something. Knowingly or unknowingly, we have become part of this system. They have, the other thing is, like, at the moment, at the university, we are collectivizing and we're trying to get the university pension fund to divest from corporations that are profiting from the genocide. So, like, even without our consent, they have taken us in and absorbed us into the system, made us stakeholders in a system that is killing us, that is destroying the environment, which is profiting from disease, profiting from, the destruction of our land, water, our environment, our air, and so forth. So that, I think, that is the essence of it, understanding that it is the people against the system. And but then we also need to identify what the system is, and that clarity, I think, that's why I was asking you, why do you think that there's so many people who are socialists who are part of this? And to me, it is a movement of overthrowing, the power. I like to think of it, in class terms, because some people are benefiting from this disproportionately. The top 1% in the world, they own 43% of the wealth on this planet. And a big part of their wealth portfolio comes from the war industry, comes from colonization, comes from extracting resources from Asia, Africa, Latin America. Our labor here in the West as well, our resources in the West as well. New Zealand, we don't have many swimmable rivers left, and yet the people aren't able to afford food. So, this understanding that our struggles are connected with that of Palestine, I think, and identifying the system very clearly and organizing against it. So it's not just the fact that we can participate in these larger movements like you both have been participating in, but also that we could even, these connections are what could probably make a revolution possible. So I mean, that's obvious, that's my dream that this people's revolution against a system that profits from our suffering and the destruction of our environment. Just want to give you the opportunity to say anything in conclusion of this conversation we had.
Yeah, I can totally second what you just said about bringing down the system, organizing to fight against it. But I want to emphasize once more that bringing down the system is part one. And I think it's just a matter of time. It will collapse. It's dysfunctional. Any dictatorship will eventually devour itself. It goes against nature, and so it will collapse. It's a matter of time and a matter of how much the price people pay. But what is, I think, just as important as organizing to fight against the system is to cultivate and envision what system we want instead, the ideas, and not just as a second thought, oh, once the system is down, we need. No, no. It's just as essential. It's the driver to fight the system is to start envisaging what kind of world we want to live in, and being quite specific about it. I think what kind of, I mean, Will and I started talking. Will had this beautiful vision for years together with his best friend to start a village, to start an intentional community, somewhere in New Zealand, maybe in outskirts of Christchurch, where people redefine what living together, what community really means, what consumerism means, what kind of houses do we want to live in, what kind of work we want to do, what kind of products we want to buy or make ourselves, and so on. So I think it sounds very cliche, but it starts with ourselves. And we had a Buddhist monk on board the Conscience, and we talked about we meditated every morning with him, and we talked with him about the moment the soldiers will come on board and the kind of thoughts we want to cultivate and all of that. And it's really, he said we shouldn't see the soldiers as an external enemy, but it's a force. The soldiers are a force that bring out something in us that teaches us a very important lesson. We learned a lot about the Holocaust, and I read about the Stanford prison experiment and things like this. And the takeaway is that we're all capable of the most heinous atrocities. Every one of us has the seed of evil in us. And if we are put in a certain system, in a certain situation, if we grew up in Israel and were indoctrinated like this, chances are we were the soldiers. And if those soldiers were born where I was born, chances are that they had played the role of the activist trying to break the siege. So we need to be aware that we have that seed in us. And we also, every human being has the seed to do amazing, beautiful acts of kindness and compassion and build this amazing world. So let's focus just as much energy in bringing down the system as we invest in creating a new one.
Do you want to add anything there, Will?
Yeah, I had one tantalizing thought while Ava was speaking, and then while you were speaking as well, Josephine, about what I felt when I was looking into the soldiers' eyes as well, because some of the people who'd been on flotillas in the past said things like, "Oh, I looked into their eyes and I saw nothing there," but I looked into their eyes and I saw pretty normal people, to be honest. And there was a feeling like, hey, if I had a conversation with this person, and there was one point as well where I was sitting next to the captain, and she said to one of these guys, "You can put your gun down. We don't have any weapons. You can put your gun down." And he sort of sighed and seemed like he understood that it was a role play, that this is all just a facade, a theatre show, And he's sort of being taken along for the ride as well. The system is not serving him either. And I felt as though with a bit of conversation and time, we could sort of get on the same page. And Thich Nhat Hanh said, I'm paraphrasing, but something along the lines of, the way to end a war is for both sides to understand the suffering of the other side. And these people, I think, are suffering. These soldiers are suffering. And we know and have connected over the last 2 years with the suffering of the Palestinian people. I mean, I can't say that I know the suffering of the Palestinian people, but I just want to say that the Israeli people must be suffering to be living in a genocidal society. And so I do think it's a matter of time before this system implodes. And I don't think that those people with those weapons are far from putting them down. I think, yeah, with a bit of connection and conversation,
Oh, yeah.
it'll all come right.
That's a really difficult, for me, contending with that is quite difficult because to me, they are at the moment the genocidal force and they present threat to Palestinian people. And in this moment, for me, I'm on the side of, the resistance and completely in support of armed resistance against the Israeli genocidal forces. I'm all for I'm DD to the IDF. You know what I mean? Like,
Mhm.
um,
I think
yeah.
I hope
So
that what Will and I said is not misunderstood as taking away from the gravity of the, I'm not sure gravity is a correct English word for this, but
oh yeah,
for the seriousness of the crimes being committed, and justice needs to be served and people need to be held accountable. And I'm attending on behalf of PSNA the International People's Tribunal for Palestine, where
Bars.
all the evidence is being collected, and it's not to take away from it and downplay that it's a genocide and it's the worst crime of our time, but I think maybe it's refocusing that we are not fighting the individuals. We shouldn't get stuck and lost in that, but we're fighting the system. So compassion towards individuals and seeing their human potential does not mean we let them off the hook for what they've committed. Justice needs to be served and they need to be held accountable, even every individual soldier. But I think I'm going to repeat myself if I keep talking. And I
Yeah,
think
no,
everything has been
yeah.
said. Yeah.
Well, yeah, it's for me, it's not about the individual soldier. It's about, that infrastructure of the genocide and the way how Palestinians can actually break free from it. It's that infrastructure um, that Israel has created in order to suppress them is the biggest challenge that faces them in their liberation. And yeah, I mean, I agree. I'm not disagreeing with you on that these individuals have been in this place and time, and therefore and so forth. But at the moment, yeah, this is obviously you guys aren't disagreeing with me either. But yeah, anyway. So yeah, let's bring this to a conclusion. So Gaza has been a moment of reckoning, of change, of radicalization for so many of us. It was really valuable to hear your experiences of facing, the Israeli genocidal forces face to face and seeing their humanity in that moment. That's quite powerful. I just want to thank you for your time and sharing this with us. It's important to document these experiences that are part of the larger struggle. And yeah, kakite ano to our listeners. Once again, thanking you. This was Will and Ava from PSNA Ototahi in Christchurch.
Kia ora,
Thank you, Josephine, for
Thank you.
having me.
If artificers are denied, live in a pointless life, but learning all your lessons. Fucking politics, there's no distinction. The road's upon now. It's paid with good intentions, and I'll admit that I'm at a loss for what to say when they quote this as a cost we ought to stay. 'Cause I live amongst the people every day. This vindictive, forgetful fucking race.